Welcome into the December edition of our Caregiver Journey Webinar series, where we're taking a little bit of a different approach today. We're actually going to be celebrating ourselves as caregivers, celebrating our successes, and super excited to have a big group joining me today, a good portion of our care advocate team here at Carello. I'm joined by Stephanie Banta, Megan Cashman, and Susan Doyle. Hi, guys.
Good morning.
Hey, Matt.
Hi, morning.
How's everybody doing?
Great.
Very
Very
well.
Good, good, good. Well, thanks for being here. Per usual, I just got a couple of housekeeping items to run through. First and foremost, if you're joining us for the first time on one of these sessions, super excited to have you. Thank you for being here. We are Carello. We're a caregiver support company. We support people who are helping a family member, friend, neighbor, just get through their daily life as they're aging or chronically ill or injured or disabled. We provide that support in two primary ways. First and foremost, with a support line staffed by Susan, Megan, Stephanie, and a bunch of other care advocates here at Carello. So that team, all they do every day, all day, is support family caregivers, help them through whatever challenges they have on their plates on a given day or week. And we complement that personalized guidance and support with My Care Desk by Carello, which is a digital platform. It's a one-stop shop for you that's always available in a web browser. Store documents, read informational articles, watch informational videos like this one, and just get the support you need in an on-demand fashion through My Care Desk. So we make that service available through insurance companies and employers. If you have access to the service, great. We're standing by to help whenever you need it. If you don't, or if you're unsure, ask your insurance company or your employer if you have access to the Carello Caregiver Support benefit. So that's first and foremost. But secondly is even more important from a housekeeping perspective. And we'd love this we always want these to be collaborative sessions and discussions. There's a reason we don't have slides and we're just having a chat here. But today, more than any other day, we'd love for you to share. We want to hear about things that you feel like were successes for you, you felt like were a win, and we want to celebrate them because it's really, really important. So I'll pause there. It's enough talking for me. Did I miss any housekeeping, guys, or are we good?
We're good.
I think we're good.
All right, all right. So let's jump into it then. And I had, if you've been on one of these sessions before, you know I'm a family caregiver, recently ended for both my mom and my father-in-law, Steve. Both were living with a different form of dementia. And I had a little bit of a light bulb moment, probably about midway through my 8 or so years of caring for them. And well, it's maybe a misnomer to say I had this moment. It was thrust on me, thankfully, by one of the nurses in my mom's neurologist's office. And I was feeling particularly down that day. I was very much in the weeds of caregiving, and she just asked me. She said, "Hey, Matt, well, wait a second. Have you had any good eye contact with your mom today? Has she smiled? When was the last time she smiled?" I thought about it. I said, "Well, yeah, she smiled this morning, and yeah, we had some eye contact in the car." And she just looked me dead in the eye and said, "That's a win." Right? So that was a really memorable moment for me. But looking back from where I am now, I feel like it was a little bit of a turning point. The message being, these caregiving successes can be tiny, they can be huge, but they're all meaningful and they're all worthy of celebration. Because she closed this moment with me by saying, "That's worth celebrating. That's going to be fuel for you. Make it fuel." That was her message to me. So that's how we got here today to talk about this topic. I'll just open it up. Stephanie, Megan, Susan, what are your thoughts on any opening thoughts on this topic today?
I love this. I love the idea of being open to and finding good moments, because I think sometimes in the crush of everything we're trying to do, we're just not paying attention to those things. And we do tend to, it's easy to focus on the places where you think you're falling short. And it's also easy to think that somehow all the other caregivers have figured this out and I'm the only one bumbling along and making a mess.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
Yeah, you feel like everyone else is perfect, right? And
right.
they have it all figured out. Yeah, love that point, Stephanie.
And it's
Megan,
also
Susan,
so, yeah, it's so
yeah,
easy to focus on the rough patches that you have as a caregiver and really just allowing yourself to find those little layups, those little wins during the day will really help you get through. So, celebrating those and just finding those throughout your day and feeling like, okay, what did I accomplish instead of what really didn't make me feel good? Try to find those wins throughout each day.
I agree. And I think we talk a lot about self-care. I think at the end of the day, it's really helpful to sit down and just remember what went well, what was good about this day, and congratulate yourself that you helped make that happen or actually put that in place, because that is you as a caregiver. Things are going well because of your efforts. And those things you recognize as being really beneficial, remember them, repeat them. They may not work the next time, but just remember that you're doing well.
yeah. I couldn't agree more, Susan. So what I'd like to do is just talk about some examples, right? Because
Sure.
in the light bulb moment that the godsend of a nurse in my mom's neuro's office sort of brought to me, it just was it was just so out of left field. Like I hadn't thought about all of these little things um, that were little mini or micro accomplishments, but they were really, really important. The size of them didn't matter. So one of the first ones I can remember thinking about was that day when we left. And again, as I said, this was sort of in the middle of my mom's experience with dementia. At that time, it was getting increasingly time consuming and challenging to get my mom actually in the car. Right, there weren't any mobility issues. She had some, she was a little unsteady, but she could physically do it. It just was a challenge to get her in the car. It took
Hmm.
a long time, no getting around it, and it got longer. But I remember thinking that day when we were leaving the neurologist's office, it was a gray day, but I sat down and was just pretty happy with myself because it had taken us under 10 minutes to actually get her in the car and get situated and get ready to leave. Right. So, and that was so almost instantly I started um, uh, sort of being nourished, I guess, by the realization that that was pretty good. Yeah, sure. It's not how I drew it up, and I'd love for it to just be instantaneous to get in the car, but it was under 10 minutes, and that was a win, right? So, do you guys have any examples? Let's do a little bit of a round robin to share some wins to help get people thinking about, wins they might have in their own day with their own loved one. Who
For
wants to
me,
go first?
So I have a family experience I'm sorry, Stephanie, I didn't
no,
mean
you
to.
go ahead, Susan.
Okay, I have a family experience with my mother that's a little different than the dementia experience, which is where you find more of those challenges. Uh, my mom actually passed about 10 years ago, but she was very physically frail and was always taken care of by my dad. She was in another state, and after my dad passed, I was the closest person, but not close, and home with
Hmm.
family of my own. And trying to make that long distance relationship work was just really throwing me in for a loop. I couldn't be driving up there all the time, and yet she had always had this attention. Um, she did move to a senior retirement home, but she still needed a lot of that one-on-one attention. So I finally opted to hire as well an in-home caregiver to do the things that she always wanted help with. Somebody to run to the store for her at her will, somebody to help her do laundry and she couldn't carry the clothes. And I felt guilty. I felt
Hmm.
guilty that I hired somebody. I felt guilty that it wasn't me. I was pretty sure in her head she was saying, I don't know why Susie's not here. And that was my mindset. And then I learned that by having that person, who we came to call her other daughter, by the way. Having that person available, right, kind of on a regular schedule, allowed me to go up and do fun things with her. I would go
Hmm.
take her out to shopping or McDonald's or whatever the German restaurant, anything she wanted to do. And I thought, oh, this is amazing time with her. I'm so much happier doing this. Then felt a little guilty about that. And then I thought, nope, this is the best thing I can give her is joy in her life, not
Mm.
necessarily laundry in her life. So I managed to let go of that caregiver guilt for not being with her 24 hours a day. And it just felt so good. I so enjoyed her then.
Yeah, Susan, thank you for sharing. I mean, there's a few things in there to celebrate. Number one, just the notion of making a decision and taking a step that you probably had been debating in your mind for who knows
Hmm.
how long. So that's worth
Hmm.
celebrating. The fact that you recognize the guilt, that's worth celebrating. And the fact that you were able to shed it, regardless of how you're able to shed that guilt, like that's worth celebrating. So love that example. Thank you for sharing. What about
Sure.
you, Megan or Stephanie?
So I have one that just came to us through a call into the Carallel helpline, and we were there. We were just talking, and one of the things the woman said to me was, I made a doctor's appointment. I finally got into the neurologist that I wanted to see, which she had been taking a long time to get the appointment. And she said, and it works with my schedule. And she was so excited because I think that's where we try and make things work for the one we're caring for, and we lose ourselves. So saying it's okay to be excited that it works for your schedule and you don't have to take time off and it starts at 4:30 and you're already off work, that's amazing. Celebrate that. Be excited about that. And she was.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
I love it. I love it. And you're right. That's just, I mean, what you're touching on there, Megan, could be we've talked about it in the context of numerous other conversations that we have here, but just this notion of recognizing that our needs are equally important as the person we're caring for. They're different, sure, but they're equally important. So I love that, and love the fact that the caller to the support line was free to celebrate that accomplishment that she had, because it is just that, an accomplishment.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have one from a caller, and it's sort of seasonally appropriate. It's someone who called us a year ago right before the holidays, and she was really feeling stressed. And part of what she was feeling stressed about was that her family tradition was to decorate her home in a really elaborate way. There was a whole village of little lighted houses and lots of decor. And she was so overburdened with the other things she had to do, and she was feeling like if she couldn't get every one of those decorations up, it was going to be bad. Her mother wouldn't be happy, she wouldn't be happy, etc. I said, sometimes a win, we're so used to thinking that accomplishments are things you do. Sometimes an accomplishment is something you let yourself off the hook for,
Hmm.
something you take off your list. And the truth was, I think choosing the part of the decor that meant the most and putting that out, and then not necessarily having to cross every T and dot every I, could make for a much more joyful holiday. And so
Hmm.
if you find there is something that you think is a should, rather than something you really want to do, see if you can give yourself permission to take it off your list. And if you can, that's a win.
I love that so much and relate to it. A few years ago, my wife and I had it wasn't to do with decorations, but it was a similar, um, exactly what you're talking about. And we always went to one certain family member's house for Christmas Eve, just for as long as we can remember. There's tradition. And I'll never forget sort of the way that decision and our thinking about it was just so emotionally charged. And we were just deciding, do we go or not go? Because it was at that point very, very difficult to get my father-in-law in the car, and he just, it wasn't a good environment. It wasn't good for him to be out of his environment. But that debate was so emotionally charged, and when we finally made the decision, it was sad for a moment. But then Christmas Eve came, and we just had such a blast. And the family, the reaction from family, they came to us, right? And will that always happen? No. So good fortune for us there. But we felt so good about it. The reward we got from actually making that decision was something that I'll never forget, because it was like just this weight being lifted, right? And that's absolutely worth celebrating. So I love that example, Stephanie. What I guess one of the things I had trouble with when I was in all of this is recognizing these things, because so many of these little micro accomplishments that we're doing, decisions we're making every day, all day, we're just kind of on autopilot. We're doing this, we're doing that, we're moving on to the next thing. So like, how do we, are any tips or thoughts on ways to recognize these things as we're notching these victories? How can we help ourselves realize that they're victories? Any thoughts on that?
I'm a big one for journaling, and I know that not everyone has the time to do it, but there's something called one line a day, and you could do it in a regular notebook, and you could write the date down and just write a thought from the day, whether it's at night or a point in the day where you have a few minutes, doesn't take more than 5, and just write something positive, something that's getting you through. Try and really focus on your needs or something that you've accomplished, and then just do it daily. And then look back and say, like, okay, in the last week, I have done a few things. You have to be conscious about it, because you're right. In this life, we're just on autopilot in so many tasks that are on our plate. And we
Mm-hmm.
have to stop and say, hey, look at what I've done today. And it may not be the biggest thing. And then the next day, there might be a huge thing that you feel like, wow, I finally got that done. But all those little things are just as important. So
Yeah,
acknowledging that and slowing it down to take the time to do it.
yeah. And I see, actually, Megan, I see, this isn't journaling related, but there's a comment in the console that somebody they just wrote a list of the things that I don't know if they don't use the word win or victory like I do, but they made a list of the things that they do, right? And just that would be helpful to have that list. Whether it's, we did exercises, we had a meal, we had a smile, etc. So good idea from the audience. Thank you for that. And then there's another comment here about exercise in particular for the loved one, and changing the definition, I guess. My words, not theirs, but you think of exercise, you think of a proper workout of 10, 20, 30, 40 minutes, however long, etc. They started looking at just one lap around the house, just one lap, which I think is great. So absolutely worthy of celebrating. And that's another one that I relate to in a big way, just because my father-in-law, as time went on, we did the same thing. We were just focused on getting them up and taking a few steps, right, by the end. That was a success without question. So thank you for sending your thoughts in, and please keep them coming. Taking a look at the clock here, we have about 10 minutes left. Love to go another round. Susan, any other ideas to share or experiences to share, either from your own experience or your work on the support line?
So I had a call probably in my early care advocate experience. I had a call from a spouse of a newly early diagnosed husband with Alzheimer's, and she was just distraught. She didn't know. He wouldn't do the things she wanted him to do. She wanted him to come outside with her and garden. She wanted him to do all the things he used to do. And he wasn't doing that. He wasn't agreeing. And so I talked with her a little bit about how it's all right to do those things by yourself, how it's all right to turn those things into self-care. A moment in the garden, usually for most people, is reflective or meditative, and doing it without him might give you that little charge that you need to go back in and deal with the next issue. And as time went on, she actually had accumulated a number of things that she would go and do, which I always put in the category of self-care because it is time for yourself, however you look at it. And she was so much happier with him because she was, she was giving herself the permission to go and do that without him. So
I love that. I love
big
that.
win. Hmm.
I love that. And I love the words you use, giving yourself permission, which is
Hmm.
um, something that doesn't never flowed naturally into my head, my thoughts as I was in the midst of it. But it's just um, honestly, those words I feel like are just could be a useful mantra for those
Yeah.
who get use out of mantras. But give yourself permission. So love that example. Stephanie, you looked like you were going to say something.
We have a colleague, just to build on what Susan just said, we have a colleague who used to set his phone to ring twice during the day. And when that happened, he would just sit and breathe for 1 minute. And I did
Hmm.
that when I was working. Even if you have to go into the bathroom and sit there, close the door and breathe for a minute, it will help you to relax, and it will help you to gain that, take you out of all the craziness. And you
Hmm.
may find if you can do that, even just for 1 minute, then if you schedule it and you can do it, that was a win because you did it that day, and see
Yeah.
if that makes a difference. But the other thing, if I can take one more moment, is what I always think of are the things that I call moments of grace. I promise
Hmm.
there will be some. They will be unschedulable, but to explain what I mean, one day I went to visit my mother in memory care, and she was sitting with a group of residents and a few staff members. And as I approached, she said, "This is my daughter." And then she turned to me and said, "And these are your cousins from Canada." My mother thought she was at a family reunion. And because she thought that, the other residents also thought that. They were so happy. One guy who was usually quite withdrawn actually was smiling and interacting with people. And that is a moment of grace that I bring with me. My mother is gone now, but it was just an unexpected gift.
Hmm.
So
I
keep your
I
eyes
love
peeled for
that.
those and hold them close to you when they happen.
I love that. I love that. And
Great.
I'm just picturing, I'm smiling, picturing your mom, kind of bringing you into that circle with your cousins. But I want to go back to the first point you were talking about there, Stephanie, which is around self-care, which for me personally, and this is just me talking, not anyone else's opinion, but few things made me more annoyed than when I was caregiving than to hear people tell me, I needed to care for myself, or I needed to take care of myself, all of that, right? The words just took on this connotation, and it was misguided totally, but this is how I reacted to it. But what you're talking about there is redefining self-care. Like, put the label aside, redefining it, which I think that in and of itself is a win worth celebrating for anyone who's in the position of caring for a loved one. Because it chances are, well, I was going to say chances are it's, self-care doesn't actually look like what you think it would, but it might, but it doesn't have to, I guess, is the more important point, right? It can be that 1 minute to breathe in the middle of the day. So I love that. I love that point. Megan, any other examples or anecdotes to share from you?
Well, I did have a caller who had called earlier this year, probably back in March or April, and had a issue that was resolved, a pretty straightforward thing. We talked for a couple different times, and then just recently she called the support line again, and she said, "I was so happy that I found the number to Carolel because I forgot you even existed. I forgot that you helped me." And That is something I think caregivers do a lot. We forget who really is in that circle of care and who we can reach out to in those moments. And it may be someone like a support line, it may be someone in your church or in your community, but it might be someone, you don't think about, oh, yeah, they've been asking about my mom, or they're interested in what's going on with me. How can I engage them and get some support and feel that energy from them that I may need? And it may not be someone you think about right away, but reach out, because a lot of people don't know how to help, but maybe, willing to do it. So you just have to identify that circle of care. I think it's very important for caregivers.
I love it. Yeah, and write it down. Right, there's an incremental sort of, or like there's another win in the middle of that, which is, yes, reach out, but step one might be just getting it on one sheet of paper, hypothetically, right? Could be in your notes app on your phone. It could be, on something taped to the refrigerator. It could be wherever, but write it down so you know when you need it. I love that. Well, I'm just looking at the clock. We have 3 minutes, and just want to sort of, in closing, reiterate the importance of celebrating yourself. You don't have to be jumping up and down and cheering, but these things truly are, however trivial you may feel like they are, they're worth celebrating, because going back to the nurse in my mom's neurologist office, what she said to me that day, I didn't necessarily believe right away, but now I know to be true, which is acknowledging those successes and giving myself a little pat on the back. It actually did turn into fuel for me, right? It did give me that boost I needed on days when I was maybe feeling particularly down or tired or exhausted or uncertain. It gave me that additional boost to take that next step, right? And that's really all I in that moment I needed to do, was take that next step. So any closing thoughts from the panel here, as it were?
I think be kind to yourself. Caregiving is really hard, and it's easy to beat up on yourself thinking you're not getting it all done. But just like we talked about today, there are wins in every day. They may be a little hidden, maybe a bit small, but trying to find those and be good to yourself in the process.
I would have to
Love
say there's no perfection in caregiving. There's no goal to be perfect. Your goal is to be sure that your loved one knows that you love them and that you're just there with them. And that's kind of all they need, really.
Yep.
Love that, Susan. No perfect caregiver. I'm writing
Mm-mm.
it down. What about
And
you,
I would
Stephanie?
say we believe caregivers are everyday heroes. So, and sometimes
Mhm.
heroism is not the big showy act. It's hanging in there and living to fight another day. So that's heroic. Don't forget that.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you all. For the audience, as I mentioned at the top, this is our last session for 2022. We will be back on January 26th with our January edition of the Caregiver Journey Conversation Series. And we'll be actually talking about caregiving after discharge from the hospital. So whether you're going to have somebody discharged from the hospital, or you just want to plan for the future, should be a great session. We're going to get really, really practical on things that we can be doing as caregivers to prepare for the discharge itself, but then make things as easy on us as possible once we have our loved one out of the hospital. So January 26th, 12 p.m. Eastern, per usual. And lastly, if you're looking forward to the holiday season, I hope it's a wonderful season for you. If you're not, for whatever reason, I hope you find a way to manage through. And thanks for attending today and throughout the year, and we'll see you in 2023. Take care, everybody.